Joining me now, Shamari Figgis, Democratic nominee from Alabama for the U.S. House. Mr. Figgis, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate it. Many of us in the civil rights and voting rights communities were surprised last year when the U.S. Supreme Court affirmed the federal judicial panel's demand for a new congressional map in Alabama that included a second majority black district in a heavily black state. Now you're running as the Democratic nominee to represent that district and could be part of a history-making a tandem of black representatives if Terry Sewell wins re-election as expected. What is your thoughts on that?
Look, good to see you again, Reverend Sharpton, and thanks for having us today. Look, this district, this newly redrawn district, is incredibly important to not just the people in this district, but people across the state of Alabama and people across the country. As you can see, it's had impacts in other states, and the entire civil rights community that came together to fight for this, the plaintiffs here in the state of Alabama, the supporting organizations and elected officials and government leaders across the country all came together once again to make Alabama, do right by people in this state. When you grow up in Alabama, as I have, especially when you grow up black in Alabama, you know the role that the federal government has had to historically play in making this state do right by people in this state, especially by black people in this state. And this district is yet again another example of that.
Now, less than a year after the Supreme Court ruled that Alabama's voting map be redrawn, the U.S. Supreme Court restored a congressional voting map in Louisiana this week that adds a second majority black district less than 6 months before the November election. Based on what's happened in Alabama, what do you expect that to mean for Democrats and black voters in that state?
Look, I think people there will equally be as excited about the opportunity to elect leadership that reflects the types of communities and towns and citizens that make up that district. It's been far too long for many places, including here in the state of Alabama, in the district that we now represent. Too many counties and communities and towns in this district have never had the opportunity to be elected or to elect leadership that can bring a level of care and focus and concern on the issues that mean the most to them and impact their communities in sometimes very unique ways. And so I think the people of Louisiana will be similarly excited about the opportunity and really get out and vote and make their voices heard come November.
This week, Mercedes-Benz workers in your state rejected unionization after 56% of them voted not to join the United Auto Workers. The loss following a historic organizing drive by the UAW that saw it extract concessions from the so-called Big Three automakers. What have you heard from auto workers in your state over this issue?
Look, I think people were excited about the opportunity that this presented for them to organize, for workers to organize and unionize in a way here in Alabama that they've not had the opportunity, or at least the momentum of such a campaign in far too long. We've seen the success that we recently had in Tennessee, and the outcome here in Alabama, I don't think was as much of a landslide as it may appear on its face. I think roughly 2,600 people voted against it, and about 2,100 or so voted in support of the union, and several hundred did not cast a ballot at all in the election. And so I think what it shows is that the opportunity for workers here in the state of Alabama to organize is not something that can be foreclosed upon. I think, with time and with more organizing and more education, that voters are going to continue, or workers are going to continue to trend in that direction. And so I think what this really showed us here in the state of Alabama in particular were during this organizing campaign, state legislators and new laws being implemented here in the state of Alabama that went so far as to disincentivize companies from voluntarily acknowledging unions. It really highlighted the fact that we have to do everything that we can to protect the rights of workers to organize when they so choose.
Now, I know that you and your family, and I know, have been involved in civil and human rights for a while, and national campaigns and certainly statewide campaigns. President Joe Biden is speaking at Morehouse College tomorrow. There has been reports that there is some dwindling of black support for the president and Vice President Harris's ticket. One, do you think that that is so from what you felt and heard in Alabama? And two, what advice would you say to them to deal with the reported erosion of black support, starting with his speech tomorrow?
Look, no, I don't sense that here on the ground. I think people here understand the realities of Joe Biden and who he's running against, and how his opponent is a throwback to an era in this state in particular and in this country where people do not want to return back to. And so, look, we know we have to do everything that we can to excite and mobilize voters to be able to get out and vote, especially Black voters here in the state of Alabama. Here in Alabama, and also similarly in Louisiana, we have the congressional district that is going to help amplify that excitement and the efforts to organize and motivate people to get out and vote. In terms of advice or guidance, look, I don't think the president needs my advice, but listen, I think if they keep running on the message of things that they've done, programs they've implemented, laws that they've passed, and the benefits of how they have historically impacted African-American communities across this country, then I think we'll be just fine. But I think at the end of the day, we all have a collective obligation to make sure that we're doing every single thing that we can to motivate people in our communities to get out and vote so we do not go backwards come November.
Alabama congressional candidate Shamari Figurs, thank you for being with us.